Welcome to Anybody Thirsty, a podcast by two guys who are just crazy enough to try.
And too stupid to quit. There we go.
That's us,
Yeah.
in a nutshell.
I'm proud of that, though. You know, we're trying. You got to keep trying. It's a fun
Yeah.
part.
Well, you know, I was, that old saying, you know, failure is not an option. Well, I'm here to tell you that failure is a huge option. It's an incredible educator if you pay attention to the things that you learn through failure. But
Yeah.
I've failed multiple times in this business, catastrophically several times, and yet, you know, got back up, dusted off the blood and the, you know, the dust and the dirt and the wound, and, you know, recentered my freaking focus and did it again over and over.
Yep.
So that's that too stupid to quit.
Well, and like mistakes are the only thing that you can really call your own. And like I approach like failure almost like a martial art, you know? As long as you're like learning from it and it changes your muscle memory and how you're looking at things and how you're doing things, then, you know, everything is worth it and you just keep trying. And that type of methodology is going to be the kind of methodology that's going to make you better at everything. I mean, just like being courageous, being willing to fail, being, you know, it's like, well, you know, yeah, there's a good chance, but, you know, a good chance of success or a good chance of failure means it's a great chance that it's going to be worth trying. And that's where we're
Totally.
at.
And so here we are at the Crown and Crow, which is the result of your having been in the trenches for a long time, having owned other places, had them succeed and then fail, coming back, doing it again.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Crown and Crow.
The Crown and Crow is a local neighborhood establishment in Logan Circle, Washington, D.C. Address is 1317 14th Street Northwest. There'll be a link at the bottom of the video that will show a virtual tour, so you can walk through the space, take a look at everything, and a cool little video that lets you fly through the space and you know, all that promotional stuff. In the virtual tour, there'll be like little hot spots that say history. It'll show a time lapse of how I drew the mural or how we did the sculptural elements. There's a lot of art in this space, and we try to feature that with our virtual tour. So if you want to dive deep and dig into that stuff, all that information is there. This was a labor of love. It took us 14 months to build it. We only had free rent for 12 months, which didn't make anybody happy when you're paying rent for 2 months and you're not open yet. But it was this was a dirt floor with no plumbing, HVAC, electrical, or anything. The top of the wood line, I don't know if you can see that in the background, but that's where the old floor used to be. This was a crawl space. So when we really had to like use our imagination when we walked in the space and say, you know, well, it's this a clean slate, a fresh piece of paper, and we just kind of made it our own.
It's funny, this is a classic Douglas development basement, and I'm in several classic Douglas development basements, and I love those guys because they take dead space, they find guys who are like, yeah, I'll put a bar in a basement, and that's you and me and some other folks. They dig it out, which is not for the faint of heart. They create spaces that are, you know, I mean, the ceilings are high here. It's great. You've got a ton of space, and it's really not usable for much else. You could have a copy center. Oops, those are no longer a thing.
Right.
You could have data storage. Nope, nah, that's already happened somewhere else. Yeah, there's nothing down here,
Right.
Short of self-storage, and even that doesn't work, so there's no elevator. So, you know.
Oh, we actually have an elevator.
But not a
It's
freight
our-
elevator.
No, and it's
Yeah.
not really our elevator, but if you're ADA, we can get you down here.
Yep. You got to get yourself out, though.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm just kidding. Whoa, okay.
So but that's, you know, when you decided to open this, what were you thinking? What were you trying to create?
Well, I'm going to be very honest. I was inspired by you and at Bedrock Billiards. The fact that we have the chance to get a space that's basically a clean slate. The rent is, I mean, very competitive because, like you said, there's nobody else wants to do anything in here. You know, this was going to be a different concept. Our concept for this establishment originally was going to be kind of like a Colorado, if you can imagine, like a Colorado brewery with live edge timber and kind of big rocks and really a kind of industrial beer guy, like a beardo bar, okay? But the reality of the matter is we have a great friend. We've both worked with him, Carter Anderson. He's kind of like if Andy Warhol and Albert Einstein had a love child, he would be Carter Anderson. But we had started building the space, and Carter found this bar, and it's a 130-year-old bar we brought from East Falls, Philadelphia. It was in absolutely terrible shape. The building was falling down. The ceiling was caving in. It at one point in time had been a pisser, which meant they wrapped it with marble and put a trough in front of
Philly
it.
has tons of those.
Oh, it's crazy. It's
my
crazy.
business partner Kurt Large has one in Philadelphia. When he got it, it was still in place.
Yeah, well, people don't really believe that, and it's hard to explain it, but there was a thing where, I mean, this bar was actually a factory bar for the Budd railcar manufacturing plant, and it was only a block and a half off the water. So this is a merchant marine, maritime, and factory bar that operated 24/7 for the first 30 years that it was there, and it was a men's only bar until the mid to late 20s, 1926. I had the great fortune of being a friend of the last operator of this place in Philly, and it closed in the mid to late 80s, I think like 1987, and the building sat empty after that. But anyhow, Carter found this bar. It was in terrible shape. We got a pretty good deal on it. It took me no, longer than that. It took me about 4 months to do the complete restoration for the bar. And then once the bar was done, kind of had to match the rest of the room to the bar because it would look silly. And we kind of chased the whole Victorian turn of the century 1800s theme all the way throughout the entire space. And it's a pretty big venue. There's a huge room on the other side we use for events. I like to say that this room makes friends, that room makes money for us, but it's not true. We make friends over there too. But it was a labor of love. It was a really neat spot. It was an application. It was an opportunity for me to apply some art stuff. I was a carpenter. I built restaurants and Taco Bells and Texacos and Walmarts throughout my early 20s.
So I want to pause and talk about that thing. I ask people when they're thinking about going into this business, what's your superpower? What's the thing that you know how to do so well that's going to separate you from the pack? It might be marketing, it might be decorating, it might just be that you attract people, you're a magnetic person and you bring people in. You may have some business experience and be super great with the actual making money part. And so what's your superpower? Well, you and I share a superpower, and that is that we both came out of the trades. I grew up here in DC. I always did things, my parents were like, oh, you want a new bike? Go figure it out. So we delivered papers, we shoveled snow, we washed windows in houses. We used to wax floors for people by hand, our neighbors, before polyurethane was a thing, I guess. And I mean, we'd do anything to make a few bucks, and then we bought what we wanted, and there was no, we didn't have to ask for anything.
Right.
And so I became a carpenter over time and loved doing that. And I knew when I opened my first bar, Bedrock Billiards, that at the very least, I could control to some degree the construction process. So I wasn't afraid of that, and I didn't have to hand it to an architect and a builder and a bunch of people who weren't aligned with my vision. And that's the thing that you lose a lot of times when you're sort of leaning on these people. They're like, oh no, the lights need to be here, or no, this fixture is the one you want. And you're like, yeah, but that light's 5,000 kelvins and I want 2,200 kelvins because I want a soft brown light. Yeah, well, the people need to see it. So you're fighting that stuff. And so you and I both had that construction sensibility, which I think, I know for me, has made all the difference in terms of how I approach building these things and how comfortable I am taking chances with our construction and our design and stuff.
Absolutely. Well, and the other thing that, I mean, as a result of being a builder, and we were both very, very creative people, all this expensive, it looks like super expensive trim work that's done in this space. It looks like we spent, $50,000 on oak trim. The reality of the matter is, I bought 460 pieces of fencing from a farm in Poolsville, and we planed and dimensioned and ripped and routed every single inch of the trim for ourselves down here. And it's neat when you can have I have a concept, I can do it, this may be the budget, but if we apply our energy, effort, and experience to a material, we can make that exactly what we want and aren't dependent upon somebody to make it for us. And those little rosettes you see on the walls behind it, I made a mold out of silicone, pulled one of them off the bar, and then just made a bunch of them out of ballistic plastic. They didn't cost hardly anything, and it looks very luxe. And
you're a guy who just has a shit ton of ballistic plastic sitting around your house just in case, who knows?
Yeah, well, if you need to borrow a bulletproof vest, I'm home after 5. No, I'm just kidding. Whoa, I've only got a couple of those. But yeah, it's neat when you can take something and completely paint a picture of what it's going to look like. And this is one of the things, because I was bartending while we were building this space. And I was bartending at Jackpot, one of Jeff's other spaces in Chinatown, really cool bar, hockey bar, really cool place. But, you know, while I was at Jackpot bartending and building this space, and you know, before we even started, I was like, okay, it's going to look like this, and it's going to be like that, and we're gonna put this there, you know. And I had all these things in my mind. I even have to put them on a piece of paper. You know, you kind of do that and make little paper cutouts for it to make it very practical. But you know, it's really neat when you're explaining to somebody what something's going to look like, and they're hearing, you know, it's kind of like, oh, okay, and then they come here when you're open, and they're like, holy shit, that's exactly what you described.
Right.
And having the power, the capability, and the experience and the understanding of tools, materials, equipment, and people to make something into a piece of, like, it's a bar is a living organism. It is like it's like a child. It's like a family member. You know, all the people that come here give it life and its breath, and the way it looks and how it appears and the energy that it gives to people is the world the child lives in. And it's really super cool to take an idea and make it into a thing, and then see it come to life and become that organism that people love and love to come to, you know, make friends, wives, children, you know, makes children, yes, not here, but afterwards. You know.
Okay, so
Go.
two things I want to talk about. One is, how many children are you responsible for?
I'd say low hundreds that I'm
Not personally responsible
No,
for.
here. No, and I'm just talking about here at the Crown and Crow. You know, I always make a very safe place for women. That's very important to me. It's actually one of the most important things. I like to see an even proportion of women and men in a place. And when you don't see that in a spot, very frequently it will mean that either the music, the service, or the products, or whatever you got going on isn't friendly for that. So I like to create spaces where men and women come, and men and women. I don't really care about the flavor of ice cream, but you know, they come together. They're comfortable enough to relax, be confident enough within themselves to talk to somebody else, create relationships that become marriages and families and all that. I have two different groups where the couple met, got married, met at my bar, first dates at my bar, got married, had children, and then brought their 21-year-old to my bar on their 21st birthday so I could be their first legal bartender. I know they probably were drinking before that, but you know, being their first bartender, and that like rite of passage is just so cool when you're the barman, when you're the host, when you create this living thing that creates families and these experiences.
That's part of this whole journey, as we said last week. It's about the people. It's really about the people. In that case, you know, at one point we started making a guess at how many babies we were responsible for, and it's got to be in the hundreds. And
hundreds, maybe.
You think about entire family. I mean, we've taken people into some new direction that is their life.
Right.
And I'm really, really proud of that. I think that if you think about what you've done as a career, you know, I invented an app that, you know, allowed people to, you know, talk, communicate, you know, like maybe just something that's nuts and bolts, or I created the back end of something. Not that that's bad, but, you know, what have you done that really has helped other people?
Right.
And I think that's one of the crazy things about this business. That, I mean, literally, I knew nothing about anything when I started, and I was, you know, as we said, you know, I was, you know, crazy enough to try and too stupid to
quit.
you know, to quit. And a lot of people quit right off the bat. They see it and they're like, oh God, you know. I lost a lot of sleep thinking about it. I had the same vision you had at Bedrock. I knew what I wanted. And my question for you, I'll tell you this real quick, you know, about Bedrock. I had such a great group of people around me, from Travis Smith, who was a designer who worked at a store called Retrospective. And back in the day, for anybody who's from DC, Adams Morgan wasn't just a strip of bars and, you know, fast casual, you know, whatever, a few restaurants. It was a retail hub for the city. So there were a lot of stores, there were a lot of storefronts that were not, you know, night places.
Right.
And, you know, it gradually became a night spot. Well, I met Travis at Retrospective, and I saw this set of furniture, as old, funky 1940s mohair couches, and, you know, like with wood. I mean, beautiful stuff, the kind of stuff that in that day you would have found in your grandmother's house covered in plastic. And I said, hey, this is great. How much is it? It was $1,000. I said, okay, I want it. Can you get me 2 more that are similar? And he looked at me and he said, oh, honey, you're opening a club and you need my help. And
right on.
that moment, a friendship that still carries on after 32 years was born. And so Travis helped me see things that I didn't see when I was building. Stephen Pelzinski, one of the greatest carpenters I've ever had the pleasure to work with, and who was on many of my projects, who really would just sit there and he'd sort of think out loud, you know, like, you could hear the cogs turning and everything. Then he would start drawing on a piece of paper. He'd say, like this. And I'd say, yes. And then he would draw another piece of paper, and he would have his material list ready, and he would get the real grind and go guys like Jimmy Fowler and Chris Biebel, and those guys would come at it and attack under Stephen's leadership. And so while I had the vision and I knew what I wanted, it was the combination of all these guys kind of saying, well, be careful, maybe try this, try that. And so when I see Bedrock, and I see really any of my places, just about everything I touch is the result of somebody else's either agreeing that it was a good idea and building it, or helping me see that there was probably a better way to do it. And so my question for you is, how much of this is your vision? Because you're a hands-on go guy, kind of my way or the highway, but in a good way. How much of this was assisted, or was this really just your vision that you pulled off?
Well, I'm frequently criticized actually for being too hands-on. My investors and a lot of other, people that work with me are like, you can have other people do that for you, and you don't really need to do all of that. And
nobody mops a floor like Brian Harrison.
Yeah,
in fact, you better get busy.
Well, mopping a floor, actually, I'm going to sidetrack here. There's nothing more cathartic, more mind cleansing, and more beautiful in the universe than mopping a floor. Especially if somebody's ever taught you how to mop a floor right, spin it inside, both sides. It's just, I'll do a little clinic and another video another time of how the meditation and like the Wim Hof breathing method of mopping a floor. It's very awesome. But getting back to that, ultimately, I don't think there's a single inch of this entire space that I personally didn't touch with regard to putting a board someplace, cutting a board, or painting something, or any of that. And I definitely want to give a lot of credit to the people who, Jeff McNabola, his crew, my brother-in-law Dave, my step. I've had a lot of people that came in and helped me. And I benefit greatly from a lot of great relationships. I have a lot of people that actually just come in here and volunteer their time. They come in after they finish their job. I have a 6-pack of beer. I pay them in beer and love, and buy them pizza, and they'll paint, they'll scrape stuff, they'll clean things, they'll do anything to be a part of creating a space. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I like to have full autonomy with regard to what has been created. I like to say that, this is the wallpaper we're going to use. This is going to be like this over here. The bar's got to go there, because in my mind, there's a complete picture. There's a 100% image of what something should look like. And it's very important to me that it come together in that way, because I imagine a room from every angle, because this is a stage. The play is going to happen.
And from every function. That's the other thing. You're very good at understanding what a full room is like and what a jam-packed, out of control. What's your max number of bartenders on this side?
For us on a Friday night, 2 bartenders, 1 bar back is as many people as you could fit back there for the most part and still be efficient. And with 2 great bartenders, that's all you need. A lot of people will overstaff a bar because they don't have necessarily as experienced or qualified people as I'm very fortunate enough to have. There are a lot of circumstances where I'll be able to get away with having 1 bartender, when in most places you'll need 2, because the one individual I've got is 2 hands busy, head on a swivel, eyes deep, and going.
That's the bartender's mantra. I asked Brian one time, what makes a good bartender? He said, 2 hands busy, head on a swivel. And I thought, man, that's...
And eyes deep. There's 3 things. 2 hands busy, that means while you're talking to a customer, they're figuring out what they want, blah, blah, blah. You're cleaning in front of them. If you're standing by the glass machine, you're taking glassware out of the glass thing, and you're like, oh, by the way, we have these kinds of vodkas, we have this kind of gin, blah, blah, blah. And, 2 hands busy, so the world, you can keep up with the world as it's happening. Head on a swivel, which means now I know that Jim just walked in the door, he drinks Guinness Zero, he's gonna want that, and and a glass of water, he's gonna sit at the anchor. Barbie in the corner wants this, and head on a swivel so I can keep up with everything, and eyes deep, which means it allows me to serve 3 customers deep. So when I'm super busy at the bar, and my regulars all train very well. When they're ready for beer, they just kind of put the glass closer to me. I can see the glass, and when they want their tab, they'll put their card on top of their drink. But we communicate with each other, and it becomes a very efficient mechanism that way. So yeah, eyes deep, two hands busy, and head on a swivel. If you do those three things, you'll be a great bartender. I mean, you gotta talk to people and connect with people and make friends and throw a good party, but that's like the martial arts. First three moves that you need to master are those three.
And that brings us to the name of this podcast. Anybody thirsty?
Anybody thirsty?
And that to me is sheer brilliance. Because we've all been at a bar where we're three deep, we're the third person deep. I'm 6'4". I stand there, and for some reason, I'm invisible. I mean, I don't have anything. I'm an average dude who's just standing there looking like he's dying of thirst. But somehow people will look right at me and then pass me at somebody who's, a foot shorter and just arrived, and get them their whole. And I'm sort of like, oh, maybe I'm just too patient or something. But when you do this, it allows me, the customer, to do this, which is something that you're not allowed to do socially in a bar. Like, hey, I'm thirsty over here. You're like, yeah, fuck off, pal. That's sort of the feeling that you get.
Yeah.
In this case, you say, I see you. Do you know what you want? And you walk through it, because it's such a great way you deal with. And if I don't know, tell me about that.
Well, I mean, the thing about anybody thirsty is the moment that I have enough space in my mind to remember the orders that I've already taken and am making the drinks that I've already made, because ultimately, if you cannot ring the drink up, then don't take another order, okay? If you can't remember what you've served, then don't serve anymore, because putting the stuff in the machine is how the business stays alive and open, and a great bartender isn't a great bartender because they're fast. They're great because they can manage the business as well as the party. But anyhow, anybody thirsty is like, the moment I get some space in my head and some room, I say anybody thirsty, and people now they'll look at their glass. It's like, well, I'm 3/4 of the way done. I know that I probably need a drink. There's three guys ahead of me, so I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to say, you want a main lunch. So what that does is it allows me to continue to be busy, make drinks, make everyone happy and satisfied. And I mean, I'm going to be really honest. There are so many times where I'll look at somebody and say, and what do you need? And I'm not going to remember what they want, but I know they've been standing there. I know they're starting to get frustrated, but I want to make sure that they feel happy to be at my party. So I'll say, hey, what do you need? And they'll say 2 vodka tonics, a Tito's and soda, and a Negroni. And I know while they're talking to me, I'm not going to remember any of that. I'm just going to be like, nod and continue to do what I'm doing. Then after I get the drinks, take the money, the credit card, blah, 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 do that, I go back to the person and say, I'm sorry, what was that again? But because they told me their order, okay, they now know in their mind, okay, he's coming, he knows I'm here, and everything's going to be okay. But if you just make them wait because you can't remember what they're going to say to you, then they're going to get frustrated, and the energy of the establishment will start to become negative because people will be frustrated in the environment.
It's recognizing somebody and letting them know that you recognize them. There was another piece to it that I've seen you do, which is, what can I get you? And they're like, oh, do you have any IPAs that are? And I've seen you pull out the beer list. Here's our beer list. I got you. I know you're thirsty. As soon as you know what you want, let me know, and I'm just going to get, and it's that there's a fluid movement to it all, which it's not something you can learn in a book or on an online course. You got to really get out there and practice it, and practice all of the pieces of it. It's take an order, it's ring it in, it's get paid, it's put the car, it's moving in it's like an assembly line in a way, but you have to think about it. It's not a social job. It is a social job. We're out there entertaining people. We want people to come in and have a great time, and we want to make them feel good. But it's a nuts and bolts job. It is a job that requires constant practice and constant improvement. I like nothing better than having somebody on the staff say, if we move this 2 feet over here, everybody in the bar takes 1 step less on each order, and we are rocking and rolling. That saves us all. You could break that down over time and say, oh my God, we can serve, 1,000 extra drinks a year when we're busy because of that one move. And if you multiply 10 or 12 of those moves that your staff brings you, if you're receptive and you let them do that, then the place builds itself. All of my places are different.
Yeah.
They all run different. We build bar, we're such dopes. We should be like pressing a button and repeating everything all the time, except we chose not to. I've opened or rebranded a total of 40 places, and they're all different because it's more fun that way. We did Bedrock Billiards, it was successful. Atomic Billiards, it was successful. Let's do another Bedrock, another Atomic. We did that. Let's do Buffalo Billiards. And that one we're thinking, okay, this is big time, we're rolling. And we ended up doing 5 Buffalo Billiards. And by the time we did the last one, which was beautiful in Philadelphia, I was exhausted by that whole, how many cowboy this and that can we come up with and blah, blah, blah. And so we just moved on to the next ideas. But that's a sidetrack. Making those people appreciate that you're paying attention to them while they're standing there. Please get me a drink. I mean, there are times when you see people, I want to give you my money. I want.
Yeah, and it gets that, it's like desperation. But I mean, I cheat. I mean, I want to say I cheat, but you know, and I've worked at many of Jeff's bars, and I've been there for the openings of them, and I'm going to be very honest, he is far too humble because the way his places are set up, I've actually had a hand in helping to do bar layout for some of his places. It is critical that your ice well, that your taps and your POS are all within arm's reach. You shouldn't even have to walk. You should be able to make a cocktail and pour a beer and ring a drink, make a drink and ring a drink. You know, the economy of motion, the more economy of motion you can have, the more drinks you can pour, and the more stamina the bartender will have. Last night, I had my ass handed to me. We were super busy here, and I'm 57 years old, you know, running, and anybody thirsty, and, you know, the run and gun stuff that I still pull off, you know, Better Living Through Chemistry, I used eleuthero and a bunch of other herbs to help me keep going, not weed. But I cheat because draft beer is kind of our focus here. We don't do a lot of bottles. We don't do any bottles. We have some cans for like non-alcoholic stuff. But being able to have draft beer, if somebody says, I don't know what I want, for me, I'm like, do you like smooth, hoppy, malty, sweet, or sour? Well, I like malty. Okay, and I don't even wait for them to look at the beer menu. I'm pouring them 2 tasters of what I have that's malty or slightly malty, and I'm like, I'll be right back in a second. In the first place, they think they're the king of England because they just got some free beer from a guy who doesn't know them from Adam, and it buys me the time to finish the order that I'm doing. And then when I come back, I get a chance to explain to them, this is the Tucher Root beer, and it's lightly malty, but it's a little bit like an English mild. You said you like an ESB, so this is why trying to like connect with people, find out what they like, connect with their aesthetic, and give them something that's at least similar to what they want is absolutely critical in terms of making relationships. And I guess if I have a superpower, I can build stuff and make things the way that I think they should look. But I think my superpower more than anything else is I can connect with anybody in a room. And one of my favorite things in the world is when somebody hates my guts upon first sight. And that happens, 1 in 100 people just don't like me. Either the way I part my hair or my voice or whatever. I just get the stink eye and the and all that stuff. And for me, I love that because it gives me an opportunity through humility, through courtesy, through service, through product knowledge, through an understanding of how this all works to just touch them, to connect with them, to create a relationship with them and the establishment, and then help them feel happy, relaxed, enjoy themselves. And most of the best friends that I have in my life started out with the whole stink eye and who the fuck is that guy, because I am a little overwhelming. I'm a high energy guy, and it's like, and powder free since 93, I'm not like that, okay? That's not where I get my juice. But that's my superpower is I have the ability to connect with a person and help them just relax and be happy. And I guess that's why this crazy shaped peg is in this crazy shaped hole, because I always wanted to be me when I grew up. I really did. My grandpa was the coolest guy I ever met, and he owned a bar for 47 years. Wow. And his beer belly was so big that I don't even know how he wiped the bar. But he was an amazing man and had the same gift. He could connect with anybody, and I love that. That's the highest ideal.
That's interesting. So we talk a lot about health, about the only 2 things that really count when you've been around the block a few times is we have our time and health. We've both lost a ton of friends on this journey, people from customers, co-workers, partners, other bar owners, people who, mentors. Some of them just timed out, from disease and whatever else and just fell over. Some went down because of substance problems. Some went down because of alcohol, also a substance, but just, it's a tough business if you can't control your drinking. It's a tough business if you think you can kind of keep going. Like I don't like to drink in my own bars. I do once in a while have a beer at the bars, but it's not a good show for your staff to be sitting around drinking and then telling them to get serious and don't drink.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's so much more important a message to be there and show them that this is a business. This is a business that's serving all these other people and making them happy and making them, get a little loose and maybe, go home and, crash out and have to sleep late the next day. That's great for them. For us, we have to take care of them. We have to make sure they're all safe. We also have to serve them and give them a great time so they come back. And then we have to be able to, you're 57, still a kid, but you're bouncing around behind the bar in a way that I never did. I really have been on the other side of the bar my entire career. I worked at Bedrock for 1 year, maybe a bit more, a little bit here and there at some of the others, but I handed it off to you and other people to really build that side of the bar, and I'm so grateful for it, but I'm also so impressed with your complete ability to build that system, to have it set where it's efficient and where you're doing something that repeats itself and yet it doesn't look as if you're repeating yourself.
Right. Well, the real honest truth of the matter is, and last night was a great example. Like I said, we're really super busy. I was on my feet from 1 p.m. until I think I left here before 11, and running and on my feet and packing kegs and cases and stuff during the daytime and blah, 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 all that stuff. But one of the biggest things that is so challenging about this business is you don't really have, when you're busy, there's no time to eat. There's no time for a real break. You can't sit down. You run into the walk-in and will inhale whatever food you brought with you. And at the end of the night, when you're done, no place that's going to sell anything healthy is going to be open. So you're looking at 7-Eleven or McDonald's, or something. If you're smart like I am now, I will pre-make my food in the mornings, knowing that at the end of the day, I need to have something that's going to be healthy. It's not going to kill me. But even said last night, I got home at 11:30 and ate some terrible food. My sleep suffered for it because I was absolutely wrung out, no energy. And a lot of the guys that don't make it in this business, these can be 18-hour-long days, and you can have several of them in a row. And that doesn't provide much time for health, energy, contemplation, perspective, life, love with family, time to pet your dog, or any of that other stuff. And I've been to too many funerals and wakes for great guys who were loving people, who were honest and kind, and just some of the best people you ever meet in your life, because it's just so challenging to maintain a work-life balance in this industry. And I'm lucky. I am flat out lucky. I've been a super heavy drinker. I smoked 3 packs a day for 30 years. So
that you came by that voice.
Oh, my voice has gotten better. I used to have, no, literally, this woman was extraordinarily rude, but I had a lady say to me, I was like, hey dear, what would you like? And she was like, hey, can I have a side of emphysema with my Tito's and tonic? I was like, you want to say fuck you, but you just can't. It's like, okay, Tito's and tonic. Tito's and tonic, I'll be right back. I'll be right there.
I love that.
Well, you get that because people don't sound like that, they shouldn't sound like that. But when you're screaming at the top of your lungs all night long, and smoking like I used to, I always used to work as a carpenter. You can smoke on the job all the time. Somebody asks you a question you don't know the answer to, best thing to do, get out a cigarette, put it in your mouth, light it, take a breath, blow it out. You just gave yourself like 5 seconds to think, which means you're going to have a much better answer to that question. So I kind of still think smoking makes you smarter in a ridiculous way.
I got the same advice from a carpenter when I was young. He said, you'll never be any good in this business if you don't smoke. And I was like, okay then, tell me why. And he said, well, it's important to stop, step back, light a cigarette. I don't think that's an imperative part of this, but
Right.
look at what you're doing for 5 minutes, which is about a cigarette,
Yeah.
and think about your next steps, and also see the perspective of what you're building, not from inside, like this, but also from back here, because sometimes you've just gone down your thing is this, and your eyes are incredible tools for seeing if something's level or accurate, or at least consistent with other parts of the
Right.
project.
Yeah.
So great advice on one hand. I'm sure he's dead on the other. So
Well, I mean, and a lot of these things, it's so wild that these philosophies and these practices can be applied to every part of your life, and it doesn't have to be cigarettes. If we lose hope and dreams and faith in ourselves and confidence in ourselves when we fail to get perspective, when we don't take a breath, a minute or 5 minutes to step back from your life and look at what you're really doing and saying, hey, that's pretty cool. I'm not a bad guy, and what I'm doing is pretty cool. We don't give ourselves enough a chance to do that. And when we're given 5 minutes to take a second, instead of looking around and look what we're doing, most frequently people are busting out their phone and looking at Instagram and being fed brain candy that are just going to leave you a hole in the head. It's wild that these are very simple things. These things that can be the best things that we can do for ourselves, just taking a beat, are just things that we're not doing because we're constantly distracted with things that make us feel mildly good, but with nothing that is really good for us. Wow, that's getting heavy there. Sorry about that.
Whoa.
But,
Well, I mean,
dude,
but let's,
whoa.
so,
Really?
another pivot, because you and I both live a stone's throw, if you're George Washington, anyway, from the Potomac River. And we walk a lot. You're a few miles apart from me, but sometimes we get together and walk. Walking is so cathartic. You sometimes send me a picture of an owl. You see, it's something where if you just leave all that shit off and just walk out and just kind of absorb what's around you for a half hour, for an hour or longer if you can, it just changes everything, changes perspective. And we've been fortunate, both of us, that this industry has provided us the financial ability to have nice houses to live in, safe, warm, cool in the summer houses with good neighbors and a pleasant scenery, and then also given us time. And it's kind of a weird, this business gives you time. If you play your cards right, you can have the time to raise a family, which
Yep.
we've both done. Your daughter was just married a couple weeks ago. Congratulations!
Yeah,
That's such a
so cool.
great thing, and You've been sort of, floating on air the whole time, and I've really enjoyed seeing that. My 3 kids they've all flown off and done their thing, and we are lucky, and this business has provided that to both of us. And for me, it was completely accidental. For you, I think maybe more intentional. But honestly, just bartending and working in a bar or restaurant was just as being a laborer or getting a job working in construction, it paid you enough to live and kind of do the other stuff you wanted to do. And then suddenly you get married, or you get serious, you start settling down, you buy a house or you buy a car, you get locked in some way to having to make payments on anything, and you got to be a little more serious. And, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this to your average person who wants to make a lot of money and take it easy, but you can have such fun while you do this. And it's almost like, I think of building houses. I loved it because we started in the mud and digging holes, and it just was total wreckage and chaos, and you're dirty and tired at the end of the night. And as you sort of come up out of the ground, and then you're framing, and then you're insulating, and then doing tile and painting and windows, and by the time you finish, you got a dust mop, and you're just like, you hand the keys to the owner, and they just can't believe how beautiful it is. And then you strap on your shit boots again and you dig another hole.
Exactly.
It's very similar in this business. You can compress that to every day. It's a stage at 4 o'clock or whenever you open. Curtains go up, and everybody has a part. Everybody has a role. Everybody has lines. Everybody needs to, in a perfect world, know their role and then, operate with that role in mind. Nothing better on a job site than when you reach out for something and somebody puts that tool in your hand. It's exactly the same behind a bar. And so those comparisons to career paths for both of us, we could talk about that forever.
Yeah, and it's really wild. There's some things that you can't, like if somebody's asked me, should I join the military? I'm a veteran. I didn't really do anything important or cool or anything, so don't even go there. But, if people ask me, there's some things that I can't recommend. It's either right for you or it's not. Like the military is one of those things. The bar business is one of those things. This is like one of the very few environments or occupations where there's an absolute relationship with your level of passion and energy and your application of time and focus to how much money you're going to make at the end of the day. Because I started at the door. I was a bouncer. I was a bouncer at the Big Hunt, okay? And it's a big
Say that
hunt.
again?
Big Hunt, exactly. But I was a bouncer at the Big Hunt, and that was kind of a very cool dive bar, but it's actually kind of a rough job. But I started there knowing that I wanted to be a bartender there, I wanted to be a bar manager, and I wanted to own my own place. I knew that 30 years ago when I started at the door of the Big Hunt. And because I worked 3 jobs, carpentry, I was a full-time college student, didn't graduate, but a full-time college student.
Another thing we have in common.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, well,
I could get that degree.
Too stupid to quit. I can still get that degree. But no, this is one of those things where, there is absolutely, the reward is there for anyone who really wants to connect themselves with this occupation. And if you're good at it, then you get respect and love and relationships and kindness. And I know I was talking terrible about, like how this job is so dangerous for people. But in the same respect, I walk 3 miles every single day, sometimes 5 miles. I ride my bike to work. I have the flexibility in my schedule because of what I do to be able to spend time on myself doing things that are great for me. While at the same time, I'm putting myself through hell sometimes. But I've got this type of business will allow you the flexibility to do what you want when it's time, when you have time. The secret is like learning that the things you want to do can be good for you, because for a long time they weren't. I spent most of my time off, hungover, sleeping, trying to well up the energy to go pull off another 18-hour day. But now I'm at the point in my life where I realize how valuable time is, and I want to go for a walk. And just like he said, there's nothing better in the universe than forest bathing. Just walking on a towpath with absolutely nothing in your mind, other than the sound of birds and the sound of the water in the Potomac River.
And an occasional 737.
Every 7 or 8 minutes or so. Yes, exactly. This is it's
part of the
quiet.
backdrop of the big city.
Yeah, exactly.
It is another point that I want to bring up is that neither of us drink much. You haven't had it
15 months now.
15 months.
I will drink again. I'm just not drinking now.
This is the time I do like to drink. It's summer. I like to go out on a boat and drink some light beers because they're water with less taste. And however, now I'm doing 100 days of not drinking in the middle of the summer. I really drink 1 or maybe 2 now, and that's it. I don't have it at 62. Your body doesn't process alcohol the way. Used to be a pro. Now I'm just smarter.
Well,
And
yeah.
but it's also it's for us. It becomes that part of the equation isn't that good. If you want to get in this business because you want to be that guy, like, hey, all right, and entertain your friends and drink beers and stuff, you can do that a lot cheaper by just buying beers for your friends, or inviting them over to your house, setting up a little bar and getting a big TV and doing your own thing. That's the truth. I know a lot of people who think they're going to be, that guy, and they get into this and they're just miserable because there's no time to be that guy if you're working on getting it to function correctly. And they're like, I can't believe I hired a bunch of bartenders and they stole everything from me, and people don't come to work, and who's going to do the work? And I'm like, well, you are. And they're like, well, I don't know how to, it's like, well, you got to learn, you got to figure it out. So there's a lot to be said for spending time doing all the jobs that a bar requires prior to signing on that lease.
Right.
We have so many things to cover as we go on with this because, from signing a lease, which is marriage, that's I do. You can't change the terms of it once you've signed it. So we'll get into that. From building out and the cost of building out and cost overruns, from raising money. There are a million different ways you can do it. There are ways you can keep control, ways you lose control. From stocking a bar. What do you sell? What's behind a bar? It's an endless list that we're going to cover, and in this just sort of free-form conversation way, because for you and me, with our combined I don't know, 75 years of experience in the industry.
Yeah, at least that, I would say.
We've seen a lot, and we still have a lot to learn. That's the other crazy thing.
No, I'm still making mistakes. I mean, I'm willing to open another bar, and people, I mean, actually I plan on opening more establishments, I think that.
Me too.
I think as long as I'm in this, as long as I'm wet, I might as well swim, and like right now, the Crown and Crow is very much a very seasonal bar. In the summertime, we're very slow. It's a beautiful, awesome spot to be in the fall and winter time, and we are like Christmas party heaven. I mean, this is where you go. But what I need to do now is I need to open a beer garden so my cash flow is consistent. And, and people who are watching this that are interested in
I'm going
doing
to try
this.
to talk you out of that, but keep.
Yeah, well, you might be able to do that, and you might be the only one that can. I'll be honest. But there's so many, if you're willing to make a mistake and if you're willing to do these things and put in the energy and the effort and the hard work, and there's a ton of all those things that are required, and if you're willing to do that, you can be very happy and very comfortable. And I recommend it to anyone. I mean, this is not an easy life, but it's definitely a good one. And just seeing how happy people can be. The proof is in the pudding. When you're working and you're there and you get to see, the fruit of your labor, and people just having literally the time of their life. I had a customer last night that remembers me from the Reef from 22 years ago. And she's like, "Oh my God, the Reef, you're that guy." And I was like, "Yep, dancing on the bar." I was a wild man. I mean, like truly wild man, truly a wild man. And the Reef, a place I had a long time ago, was like an iconic spot. It was an amazing place. But just like the moment she remembered that and the look on her face, and like she's, "Oh, I had so many," and I just let her talk, And then after she was done talking about it, I asked her another question about like how she felt about it, and just like experiencing that and knowing that all of that happened, that time was spent, those memories were made because because I decided to get a bunch of bartenders together and build a bar in Adams Morgan. That's worth more than any amount of money in the bank.
Yep.
It's worth more than anything because, at the end of your road, when you look back on your life, did you enjoy what you did? Did you
Check.
Yeah, exactly. Did you do something that people remember?
Check.
Are people going to continue to say your name? How long are you immortal in the minds and mouths of the people that you've been around? Those are things that are important to me, and I'm just feel very grateful, unbelievably grateful to have worked with so many awesome people and had so many great people inspire me to do what I've done. Jeff is a huge inspiration to me. I literally 80% of the structure that has happened in my life in this realm has come through his inspiration, and I'm just happy to be able to do the show.
I'm not going to be able to fit through the door. My head is going to be too.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I can loosen the hat
Okay,
a
there
little
we
bit.
go.
I
Yeah.
can loosen the hat.
I appreciate that. What I know is that both you and I very often help other people as they're facing problems in their businesses. Each other often. I call you, you call me. It's open. It doesn't matter when, whatever. It's like if I can take your call, I always do.
Mm-hmm.
If not, I get back to you. Other people who call, people call me out of the blue. Oh, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh yeah, well let's talk about that. I'll give you 20 minutes or a half hour and either tell you to go for it or tell you to run screaming from the room. There is as you said, as you go through life, and I'm going to say I'm a little over halfway. I'm planning to live to 120, but that's a different story. I plan to work in this industry for another 30 years. So got to stay healthy, got to stay active, got to also learn. Constantly learning is the other thing. You can't just sit back and say, we got it covered. And the pandemic taught us that in a big way, obviously.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We're still recovering from businesses that had cadences that have been the same roughly 10, 15, 20 years to now suddenly trying to figure out what the new downtown is, what the workflow is, people working at home, who's doing what. Now we get to say, fuck it, we're out.
A lot of people have. A ton of people have.
A lot of people left the industry, or we say, okay, here's a challenge, and now it's time to sharpen our, pencils a little bit, and work on the plan and figure out what the next way to be, great for our customers is.
Right. Well, and you listen to other people. That's like one of the big things is the world is constantly changing. I mean, and right now, probably faster than any time in history. You know, the way that people connect with each other, the place that people go, how do they decide where they're going to go? You know, all these things are absolutely different than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, definitely 20 years ago, and when I got in the business 30 years ago. You know, you can have, food delivered, you know, booze delivered, you know, you can have anything delivered. You don't need to know how to talk to a person.
Friends. I need friends. 2 friends who like sports, 1 who likes to talk about Can I do that?
Yeah, so swipe left, swipe right. You know, how tall are you? You know, all these things have removed the need to be challenged. I think we need to be challenged. You need to go out and work for some of this stuff. I mean, if nothing else, walk to the store. You know, but like when you come into an environment where you are around other people and you're challenged with the notion of actually talking to somebody that you don't know, and you know that's where we have to be. We're primates. We used to snuggle and pick bugs off each other, and we were always in constant contact.
That's
and
just us.
Yes, exactly. And I got lots of bugs, but you know we're not like that anymore. And I think a lot of these problems that we're having as a society and individuals relates directly to the fact that we're not spending time with each other.
And that's the opportunity. And
Exactly,
the opportunity
100%.
is how do we adjust these businesses? Alcohol is changing, consumption of alcohol. It's not beer, it's interesting. Seltzer, hard seltzer, lots of seltzer options, lots of canned things, wine. I mean, things that we couldn't dream of 10 years ago have flooded the market, and we are now, you know, trying to process how many draft lines, what's on draft lines. Oh, we have more draft cocktails now. We have things that we can make and put in our own little mini kegs. We've got things we can brand our own. We can partner with people, so many microbreweries and wineries and everything. I'd hate to be a salesperson for any of these small businesses because they come in, hey, can I get a draft line? It's like the line forms here, and I think right now it's out the door and going down the sidewalk. So, you know, no is the answer.
Well, I do a lot with tasters, and actually at the Crown and Crow, I recognize this challenge, this trend towards away from alcohol, and alcohol is not, it's not a vitamin. Okay, it's not an energy drink, and it helps us to relax and loosen up, and you know, and become the people we want to be, and oftentimes people we don't. But I actually, during COVID, I became an herbalist. And it's being an herbalist and being a bartender are very similar things, but I didn't know if this was ever going to come back, so I want to try something new. But here at the Crown and Crow, I make beverages that use medicinal herbs to create that have energetics that can help you feel confident or more talkative.
And they work.
And they work. Exactly. But confident or more talkative, more relaxed. There's euphoric things that I use that are euphoric. Have nothing that has to do with THC or any drugs or anything like that. But you know, I can mix these with drinks that don't have any sugar, they don't have any alcohol, they're just fresh squeezed juice and medicinal herbs, and people can still get the energetic and the relaxation you would from alcohol.
And that's
without
the future.
That really kind of is the future.
Yeah.
I mean, people are always going to want an old fashioned. I mean, literally, there are things that are going to be staples that will exist in society forever. I mean, Star Trek. In Star Trek, they've got 10 forward or whatever that bar is called, you know, where you get Romulan beer or whatever. That's going to exist. I mean, that's the truth. That stuff is going to be there forever. There will always be a need for an unbelievably cool single malt Scotch or a beautiful French wine. Those things will always be there because there's nothing like them, and they represent history and tradition and culture. But on the day-to-day basis, and for most of people in society, they're going to want to be able to cut loose without feeling hurt, you know, or waking up feeling damaged. And I'm trying to expand my focus and understanding of what else is out there that can help to provide these benefits for people. So we do that here at the Crown and Crow now. I mean, you can come in any night, I'm bartending, and I will custom make a drink for you that'll provide an energetic that can help you to relax.
That's such a great thing
cool.
for you. I mean, just to Manhattan here, you know, same thing for 30 years, whatever. But to be able now to be using all your knowledge about that, and you are one of those guys who, when you get something that grabs your attention, you throw yourself into it. I love it when you say, "Oh, I just took 7 courses on this, that, and the other, and I spent all my time." I'm like, how many hours are in your day? Is the question I'm always wanting to know.
I wake up very early.
Yeah.
I wake up very early. I'm usually up at 5 o'clock or 5:30 in the morning. I do a ton of video editing. You see what we're doing here. But I've got a photography business, a drone videography business. I do my herbalism stuff. I'm about to release a beverage, or working on supply chain aspects for that. I was going to talk to you about that in a while.
Yep.
But no, I think that, the more things you try to do, the more things you can fill your life with, the richer your life. And if you want to be financially very happy in this country right now, should try to have as many revenue streams as you can. I mean, like if you're a specialist and you're a brain surgeon, you pretty much know what you're doing. But if you're a guy like me who has the benefit of a high school education and pretty much that's it, I need to look at everything I might be good at, learn as much as I can about those things, and try to create a product or service or something that can help the world and help me to realize as much financial opportunity as I can.
Nice.
And that's what these other things are doing for me. And I love the challenge. I like learning new stuff, man. If there's something else that's, like you said in the Bedrock version, the next trivia night. Trivia didn't exist 10, 20 years ago, and now it's everywhere. Somebody had the idea to do trivia in a bar, and I love that question, that comment that you had in that video. What is the next trivia night? I mean, that really. What is the next trivia night? What is the next idea that's the ice-breaking thing that's going to make people want to get together and do that?
And we'll figure it out. And as soon as we do,
we won't share
if it's great, everybody will do it, and that will be great too. Because from our end,
just kidding.
We want to share what we know.
Yeah.
There's nothing proprietary about opening and running a bar.
Right, absolutely.
And there's nothing that can't be copied. I have people coming into my bars all the time, and they're taking pictures and they're writing stuff down and they're recording. It's like, oh, you're opening a bar. They say, oh, it's like, no, it's great. What do you want to know? It's like, oh, well, I'm wondering, how blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, sure. If you open next door to us, let's make it a great block. I mean, you can only control what you control within your four walls, and hopefully make people happy. They go out, tell their friends, they come back. I think we've got a pretty good amount of gab going on here today. I do want to talk about one of the things we're going to add to the podcast, and that is answering your questions. Whether you're in the industry, want to get in the industry, whether you're trying to figure out how to solve a problem within your own bar, or you're thinking about expanding. We haven't done everything, but we've touched an awful lot in this business, and we want to answer some questions of yours and hopefully help you and then our listeners figure out some better ways to do things. At some point, we'll have other ways to present this knowledge, but right now we're just going to throw it all down on the podcast and just keep showing up once a week and get your feedback. And if you love it, great. If you hate it, tell us why, and maybe we can make it better. If we could serve you a drink, across this, through this camera lens, we would. But feel free to come on by one of the bars, and your odds of finding Brian here are pretty good. Your odds of finding me, you're going to have to be a little bit of a detective, but that's okay. We will host some things together jointly so that our audience can come and get together and play with us and play with together. So.
Yeah, we also look forward to inviting other operators, owners, operators, bartenders, people in this business who have something to share, that can help all of us, understand how to be better people, customers, how to learn how to talk to each other better, all these other things. There's so much about what we're talking about here that's not just the bar world. I mean, it has to do with your entire life. We're not sages and the wise old men on the hill. At least we're old men on the hill. But your comments and your questions, and as specific as you like them to be, are ways that can help us to improve the content of this channel and what we're hoping to do in the future. And we're still a little rough around the edges, and it's going to take us a little while to get.
Got 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the whole too crazy to, all that stuff, and too dumb to quit, or I look forward to, having this blossom and having this experience become, what I'm certain will be something that's good for us, good for you, and nothing else entertaining, because, we're still willing to make mistakes and laugh about it, because that's 90% of it.
There you go. Well, that goodbye was not quite as long as the goodbye in Titanic, but
right, exactly.
We're getting there. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers. Have a great night. Thanks.